Hello, we are here today to discuss the To Be or Not to Be soliloquy from Hamlet. It is one of the most recognized and famous pieces of writing in the English language. But what does this tell us about what it means to be human?
This speech shows how since the beginning of time, people have wondered about what happens after death and in the afterlife.
I agree, and in this way it shows the different stages of grief Hamlet goes through after his father's passing and struggling coming to terms with his new reality. He is battling trying to find a point in living without his father, while living with a murder on his conscience only he knows about.
Okay, the next question is, does its popularity suggest that most people feel this way at some point in their lives? If not, what about the speech makes it something that people have consistently valued for over 400 years?
This speech has been popular for over 400 years because at some point in their lives, everybody has been overwhelmed with the troubles that come from living.
You tell me.
Yes, and I also think that it has been valued for over 400 years because of throughout history, events have happened that have made people feel it this way, and that every generation thinks that this is the worst time. And I think that that also just adds to the popularity of it.
I hope you've enjoyed our discussion. Be sure to tune in next time.
Hello, we are here to discuss the first question, which is what is the main idea that Shakespeare is trying to convey with the soliloquy? What does he want the audience to feel, and is there a message that they can apply to their own lives? So I feel like Shakespeare is giving some foreshadowing in the To Be or Not to Be soliloquy and saying that Hamlet is clearly not afraid of death and that he is willing to die. And he obviously has some mental illness issues, which is interesting to me that Shakespeare would bring mental illness into light for the time that it was written. And it's a tragedy, so.
Yes, and Shakespeare, what's the main idea to be asking the question, should I die or should I live with the pain?
I agree with Juliana because he basically writes his suicide note in the middle of the story. So we obviously know that something's going to happen whether he dies or not, but because of the fact that it is a tragedy, we know he's going to eventually end up dying.
Right. So the fact that it gives away that it is a tragedy, we can confirm for 100% that Hamlet's going to die. Just like in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, most people think that's a love story, but it is a tragedy in which both Romeo and Juliet die. So,
I hope you've enjoyed our discussion about this question.
So we're talking about what would Freud say about Shakespeare's personality and subconscious based on reading this. In my opinion, I think that Shakespeare's probably struggling with suicidal thoughts himself and struggling on whether or not to stay and live or just kill himself. And I think that it shows through everything that he wrote.
No, because I don't think that, because I think that he wrote that as a character for himself, and I don't think that he really is battling with suicide. I think that he's just curious, and yeah, I don't think that's how he feels.
I agree with Madison's statement
Because
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 Matthew.
okay, that's about it.
I agree with what Madison was saying too, but
that's what I meant.
I think I think that every author has a deeper meaning to what they're writing than just the character. And I think that Shakespeare had something else in mind when he was writing.
Yes, but
He definitely had something else.
I also feel like he wasn't really using it as a cry for help, as him just being like constructive and like creating a character. Yeah, that's how I feel.
I agree. Thank you for listening to our podcast.
Okay, so let's start with the first part of the question. So, what do you think is the main idea of the Shakespeare, or that Shakespeare is trying to convey with the to be or not to be soliloquy?
Well, I think the main idea is the struggle of human existence, the question of whether life is worth living or not.
Yes, I agree. Shakespeare is exploring the idea of mortality and the fear of the unknown.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also think he's trying to convey the idea that we all have a choice on how we live our lives and stuff. We could choose to take action and make a difference, or we could choose to give up and just let life go by.
Absolutely, and that's where the famous line, to be or not to be, comes in. It's a question of whether it's better to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune or take arms against a sea of troubles.
But what do you think Shakespeare wants the audience to feel while listening to the soliloquy?
I think that he wants the audience to feel empathy for the character of Hamlet and his struggles in the meaning of life.
Yes, and I also think he wants the audience to feel a sense of introspection, to think about their own lives and the choices they make.
Do you think there's a message in the soliloquy that people can apply to their own lives?
Yeah, I think that the message is that life can be full of difficult choices, and we have to have the power of our own to choose our destiny.
I also think the message is not to be afraid of the unknown, to take risks and to live life to the fullest.
Yes, and never give up on hope, even in the darkest times.
Yeah, I'd say that overall, I think the main idea of that Shakespeare is trying to convey here, in the "to be or not to be" soliloquy, is that life is a journey of choices, and you got to make your own and make the most of the time that you have on Earth. Hopefully, that's 3 minutes.
It's not, it's fine.